Hi guys, welcome to the next art box. So the things that are in this art box is pretty much what I call a starter box. So it's things that I use in pretty much all of my tutorials. So it's going to be very useful for you guys in the long run. It's not like the other art boxes where I try new supplies and equipment and see what exactly I can do with them. This is something I am familiar with and I know how to use, and I use it all the time. So the things that you're going to find in your art box is you're going to find a little sketchbook with Fabriano paper. I thought these were really cute, so it's something you can carry with you and you can test things out as you go. We also have the Zested blender solvent. So this is a non-toxic blend. I haven't tried this before, but this is the only thing that I can actually post overseas because it's non-flammable. But I really like the idea of using this anyways because I don't want to work around any toxic chemicals in the first place. So I will be happy to transition over with this and we will experiment with it more to see if that is possible. We also have a little brush, a number 2 Jessa short flat brush, and this is going to be probably the sort of brush I use the most to blend, especially small detailed areas. So this is the most common brush I use to blend, but you can obviously use whichever brush you're comfortable with. The other products that I like using, the Tombow Eraser is one thing that I use all the time. I use it for texturing and I use it to erase smaller details, and I pretty much use this eraser in general over everything. Unless I have a wide area to erase, only then will I use a bigger eraser. We also have 2 Prismacolor pencils. I would love to send the entire set of pencils, but obviously that's not reasonable. So I just added 2 colors and we are going to draw a cherry with it. So we've got PC1093, the seashell pink, and then we have crimson red PC924, which we're going to use as well. Obviously, if you have more colors, then go ahead and experiment with them as well. So this is just a supply list telling you about all the supplies that I just mentioned here. And then the challenge that I put on this is to practice drawing one drawing a week if you can, using these supplies and sort of practicing in this sketchbook. And then the print that you got here is a drawing that I did of my dog Honey, and it's a nice large print compared to the normal postcard size prints. So that is the supplies for this month's art box. So let's start playing around with them and see what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to use all these supplies and how simple it is to get really great effects in your drawings. So go ahead and put your print away. And then one thing that I'd like you to do, or that would be useful for you to do, is to take a piece of cardboard and put that behind every piece of paper that you're going to be drawing on. And that is going to just make it a lot easier to keep the papers behind it sort of smooth and clean, so you don't have to worry about getting any indents or anything into them as well. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use the Tombow Eraser and show you a nice effective texturing technique, and I'm going to use that over here, and then I'm going to show you an etching technique with the Prismacolor pencils, and then I'm going to show you how great it looks when you blend the Prismacolor pencils with the Zested solvent. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pan pastel and I'm going to just fill in this area. So you can do this with pastel pencils, and this is just a really cool technique you could do or use with your Tombow Eraser. Unfortunately, this technique doesn't work that great with Prismacolor and oil-based pencils because it's obviously not something that's that easily erased. So I'm going to show you what you can do different when it comes to that. Okay, so now we have the pan pastel down and we want to get a nice soft, almost hairy texture with our Tombow Eraser. So I am just going to use little flicking motions and create those textures. So this is very effective with anything when it comes to highlighting in an eye or creating nice soft fairy textures in your drawing. So you could use pastel pencils as a sort of underlayer and then create this texture and then create more texturing over the top and sort of build up your layers that way and build up your texturing. So particularly when you're using pastels, one thing to remember is if you want to get any excess eraser bits off, you want to use a brush, not your hand, because you're just going to smudge that pastel even more. So there's a really, really great, easy way to create a nice texture using the Tombow Eraser. So the next thing that I'm going to use, and this is my utmost favorite technique when I'm drawing any sort of animal that is furry and soft, or even hair. You can do this with hair as well. So many of my previous art boxes would have had this, but if you won't get it in this art box, but it's easy to get this from any local arts and crafts store. So you can get usually these sets of 5 or 10 sculpting tools, and each end has a different sort of end. All you need is this one with a sharp pointy bit. You can use that, or you can use a needle file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also create a texturing look like this, but I am going to scratch the texture into my paper. So you will not be able to see me scratch the texture into the paper because obviously there's no color on the paper. I have to also look quite closely. So one way to see the texture of your paper is to hold the light at an angle next to your drawing, and then you should be able to see where that texture is. So this is also a very effective technique when drawing eyebrows or even eyelashes or anything soft and furry or anything that you need highlighted, really. So you can always texture the paper before you put the color down, and it gives a very, very realistic effect to it, and then it saves you from actually having to draw in the texture. I hope the camera's not going to be too fancy. This is another reason it's good to have a piece of cardboard at the back of your paper, because you don't want to etch the pieces of paper behind it and damage it, because you don't know what you're going to do on there next. So the current tutorial that I'm doing is of a giant lion, and this is the biggest drawing I'm attempting ever, and it's going to it uses all these techniques. And then the previous tutorial that I did of the giraffe, so it was a 6-part tutorial that literally goes step by step into detail about every aspect of the drawing. I really use this technique a lot. So this was a complete underlay of texture for the entire giraffe. And then adding the color over it in gradual layers, and then I also show you how exactly to keep the texture there without overdoing it with colors on top, especially when you're blending with solvent. When you're blending with solvent over etching like this, it can go into the indents of the paper, which is what you want to avoid. So I got most of this circle colored in or etched out. So I'm going to use just any art pencil. I'm going to use a polychromos pencil, just violet, and I'm just going to show you the effects that it has. So in this area you can see there's no etching, and then where there is that texture, it just pops out as nice soft highlights. And because it's so fine and so thin, it makes your drawings look so realistic. So if you compare that to the Tombow Eraser furry highlights or texturing, it's a lot finer than that, and that can just add to the realism of your drawings. Okay, now I am going to color this circle in with the crimson red that you got in your kit, and I'm going to show you how effective the blending solvent is. Okay, so now take the brush that you got in your kit, open your Zested solvent, dip your brush in and just sort of get all the excess off of it, and then start on the edge and start blending. It immediately brings the pigment of the drawing pencil out very, very brightly, and it also makes the texture of the paper look completely smooth. It takes away that entire crayon look. It makes it look very smooth and realistic, and then you can keep layering like this. You could probably add about 5 or 6 layers on top of this once it dries. So I really like the solvent, and I love that it's non-toxic, and it feels just as good as the alcohol-based solvent that I do use most commonly. So I think I'll definitely substitute that one for this one because this is non-toxic. The only difference with this solvent compared to the alcohol-based ones is that it's got an oily texture. So if you are going to put the solvent down just on a piece of paper, actually let's do that. If I had to blotch the solvent down like that on a white piece of paper, it's going to leave that oily mark there. It's not going to dry clear. Whereas the alcohol-based solvent dries completely clear and that mark goes away. So if you want to leave the paper white, then be careful not to get the solvent onto that because it will leave an oily mark like that. And then if you want to get that even smoother, you could take a piece of tissue in your finger like that and rub it nice and smooth. And that's going to get it really smooth. Okay, so that's how amazing the solvent is. It takes away that entire crayon look and it makes it look very smooth, and it allows you to layer on top in a couple of layers. So when it comes to texturing like this, when you're going to blend with the solvent over the top, there has to be absolute minimal solvent on your brush because you don't actually want it to get into those crevices. Let's clean the brush. So I would suggest that when you are going to blend over etching like that, you dab it until it's pretty much dry. And then you are going to blend the top layers in a very soft way, so it's not really going into those crevices that you created for the texturing. If it does, then you still have too much on your brush. So right now I still have a bit too much on my brush. So you have to be very patient with this process. So there you can see I had too much on my brush, so it went into the crevices of that etching. So that's just something to be aware of. And down the bottom here there wasn't any etching, so we can just make this look really nice and smooth. This can also come in very handy with landscape drawings if you want to get those fine, long grass, dry grass, and things like that. It's kind of what it looks like. And there you have it. Another thing I want to show you, that's why oil-based and wax-based pencils are my utmost favorite pencils to use. And the reason I love to mix them both together is because when you are using wax-based pencils, you can layer the light colors on top of the dark colors. If you are only using oil-based pencils, you cannot layer light over dark. But if you are using oil and then you want to layer light over that, then you can use your wax-based pencils to layer light over that. Or you can layer light wax over wax. So this one we used a Prismacolor Red wax-based pencil, and now I'm using the wax white. And I just want to show you how great the white can sit on top of the red. So not going to be completely white, but it is still going to give you that nice light layer that you need. Usually if you want to put a completely white layer on top of something because it's glossy or shiny or really highlighted, then you would use a white gel pen or a fine line paint marker. And there, that makes it look really nice and highlighted and gives it a sort of marble effect. And those are all just using one color. So when it comes to layering and adding details, you can make things look super, super realistic. And these are the basic techniques that I use all the time. The Tombow Eraser I don't use as much unless I'm using something as soft as pan pastels. Unfortunately, wax-based and oil-based pencils, particularly if you layer, is not going to erase as easy. So that's why the Tombow Eraser is more of a handy technique when you're using pastel pencils or chalk pastels or something like that. When it comes to doing the texturing with the oil and wax-based pencils, then I predominantly do the etching technique. That is what I use all the time. And then obviously blending my colors together, I always use a solvent to blend, and I like mixing my wax and oil-based pencils. So those are all the basic techniques, and now I'm going to use those same techniques to draw a cherry. Okay, so using the crimson red that you got in your set, you are just going to draw the shape of a cherry. So just have a look at a picture if you're not quite sure. Okay, so I have a rough outline. Now I can start adding value. So when I'm looking at a reference photo, I'm looking all the time. So I have the reference photo close by, and my eyes are on the reference photo almost as much as it is on my drawing paper. I'm only using 2 colors for this, so it's not going to be as realistic as it could be, but if you have a bigger set of prismas and you can add more colors, then go ahead and do that, because it's got quite a few ranges of reds and pinks in here. But I'll also show you how realistic you can get with just using 2 colors. So you're using your base color, which is this one, and we're using different values in the same color. So some areas we're making darker than others by simply using pressure. And that just makes the transition between the dark and the lighter colors very soft, and that's what adds dimension to your drawings. I'm going to add a very soft layer for the highlighted parts of the cherry. And don't worry about the crayon effect, because you never really want to use pressure when you are drawing, because the more pressure you use in your layering, the harder it is to layer more. So when it looks like this and looks very crayony, it's okay, because the minute you're going to put that solvent down, that crayon effect's going to go away. Okay, now I'm going to use my Seashell Pink PC1093, which you would have gotten in your box. And I just want to add a soft layer between the lightest layers and the darker layers, and that's also going to help with the transitioning of the colors. Okay, now we're going to blend with the solvent. So you're going to dip your brush in, get any excess off, and start off with the edges so you can make those edges really, really nice and smooth. Then I usually like to blend the darker areas first and then gradually go into the lighter areas. You could do it the other way as well. Take your time blending. You don't want to put too much on your brush and be in a rush, and then it just ends up being a mushy mess. So be patient. I do have a tutorial available on Patreon on how to draw cherry lips. So it's just these beautiful red lips that are about to bite into 3 cherries, or more than that, a couple of cherries. And then I go into way more detail on the different red variations and coloring on each cherry. Okay, so that is what I would consider the first layer. So once you have that, it's easier to start building things up from there. Okay, so I am going to add more value where I can. Okay, now I'm going to use my seashell pink and work on those highlighted areas. Okay, now I am going to use my white wax-based pencil, so my white Prismacolor pencil. You can use any white wax-based pencil, it doesn't have to be Prismacolor. And I want to add more to the highlights. The center of the highlights are even lighter than the edges. So just making that transition appear. I'm just going to add the stalk just to get that out of the way. Okay, now I'm going to blend a little bit more with the solvent. There's so many more colors I want to add to the realism of it, but that just gives you the sort of rough indication of how it goes. So you're going to use a variety of colors, and you're going to layer, and you're going to work out what colors you have. So you're going to put all your colors down as an underlayer before you start actually blending, and then you develop the details of those colors layer by layer after you start blending. So that is the very, very basics of techniques that I use all the time. So I really hope you guys found this art box very useful, and I hope that we can add to this book and add as many things as possible every single week and learn more and more techniques with more and more materials as we go. But this art box is going to be the best one, and then I will probably develop this box a bit more and create a starter box which I can sell on my website, which will be very perfect for anyone trying to start out using my tutorials. So thank you guys so much for getting this month's art box. I hope you guys enjoy it. I love all the materials in here, and now everybody should have a good understanding of exactly how to use it, and then you will see them pop up in my tutorials all the time and know exactly what to do with it, and you already have it at hand. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next art box. Bye!